The Japanese, still more numerous than British intelligence ever seemed to report, began a counterattack that saw some success. A few British positions were temporarily captured, and thousands of British troops were lost across the theatre. Ultimately though, it wasn't enough. Near the shogunate capital of Edo, British forces suddenly arrived by sea. This was the Empire's killing move. There was little in the area to stop them from taking Edo, but fortunately for the ruling Tokugawa, the British had other concerns for the moment. On the front lines, there was a mishap when Dorian Cartwright pursued a retreating raiding party into a huge ambush.
By the powers of the devil! Japs in the snow, sir! They were lying in wait! Turn about and retreat! Do not engage! I can't believe this. This is that power at work, isn't it? What the Orientals call karma. This madness is not within my remit to experience. Sir, the infantry aren't following! What? Dash it, they ran for the trees! Is that what they teach them in those miserable camps? They shall have to fend for themselves. We can reach them, sir! The enemy are in disarray trying to keep track of us! I'll be the judge of that, Captain. Keep the men riding, let me look. They're trapped. John trusted me with those men. There is nothing about my character that I can call upon to redeem myself to him, is there? The heavens surely wish for me to stay and get what I deserve. Well, we'll see.
Hello there, welcome back to Honourable Gentlemen. So we're starting off with this ambush. The first thing I did was send all of my cavalry out of the ambush zone, and they did manage to escape smoothly, but the same can't be said for the infantry. Tried to put them in cover in a nearby forest, but they're just being swamped by a couple of armies from all sorts of different directions. Not much they can do there, they can't escape since the enemy have cav. I've just put them all in square formation so they'll hold out against the enemy's melee troops for as long as possible, but really there's not much hope. Now, a few enemy units were coming towards my cav in a fairly isolated fashion, so I turned back to engage them, thinking we can take these guys out while most of the enemy army is distracted by the infantry. All of the melee units can easily be taken down by our dragoons, who can just shoot them at point blank range, and if they get too close, the dragoons will easily run away. Then we've got our lancers, who we can use to attack some of the enemy's ranged infantry as well. They've got some mounted bows and foot bows here, both of whom are going to be charged by multiple units of lancers, so that's all good. The risk is that they do have some regular line infantry in the area who would be able to take down our dragoons. They outrange them and can outgun them. So we need to be very careful about those guys and try to force them into melee if we can, since having a ranged fight with the dragoons probably won't go very well. They're actually shooting at my lancers right here, so I needed to, as quickly as possible, finish off those archers and then go for them. In the end, I actually went for them just with the dragoons in melee, since they were sort of distracted. While all that's happened, my infantry have been destroyed. They are gone, and now the greater part of the enemy force is coming towards us. But we have achieved something. We did destroy the half a stack, at least, of troops that was attacking us initially, attacking our cav, that is. So something has been done there. We've inflicted losses on the enemy greater than those we've taken. Now all we can really do is wander around with the cav and see if any opportunities to do anything else arise. The enemy have lost most of their own cavalry, so they're not very manoeuvrable right now. They're going to spend lots of time forming up and just wandering around. And occasionally this causes units to end up on their own in the edge of the line, on the edge of the line. And here's a case where we get such an event. An enemy officer can be attacked by my lancers. With their anti-cav bonus, that will be an easy fight. And then I'll set up the dragoons nearby to shoot at the units that are now kiting onto my lancers. All of the nearby melee troops started chasing the lancers. The lancers go behind the dragoons, but the melee troops are still trying to get to the lancers, so they're just running past my gunners and being shot down, and we can take out a couple of units in this fashion in a relatively low risk way. Once the enemy army gets too close though, we just have to get out of there, and then go back to the plan of running away and seeing if anything can be done. While I was microing that, Dorian actually got attacked, and I didn't realise, by some matchlock troops. I was forced to just charge right into them before they fired off another volley and did serious damage. But now that we are at close range, things are okay, because Dorian's guards are max rank, and they have extremely high melee stats. So I think we lost one guy in this melee and defeated the entire enemy unit, just slowly slashing them apart. Not too bad, and Dorian himself, of course, is still alive in there. After that, I hit him in some trees, so he'll have a bit of defense against ranged attacks if he gets hit by surprise again. Then it's back to microing our cavalry battalion, which really can't do anything. The enemy army's formed up quite tightly, so we can just stand around far away and make them walk after us. And at this point, the prospect of a victory by default is becoming pretty real, because the enemy can't really defeat us in this battle. We can't lose the ambush, so we can win on a technicality if the timer runs out. And while we wait for that to happen, we might as well see if we can kill some more enemies. We kill an enemy general who happened to separate off from their army at one point. But aside from that, we didn't achieve that much, especially because later on the AI completely gave up on pursuing us. They just formed up their army right here, facing the edge of the map, and they didn't do anything. So I just sat in the corner and thought, fine, I'll take my win by default if that's how it's gonna be. Didn't feel particularly deserved, but we did actually achieve something in that battle. We probably defeated a lot more value on the enemy side than we lost, and most importantly, Dorian is still alive, so we've gotten out of the hairy situation. I hope my steam has got this to you at a reasonable pace. Things didn't go to plan, General. Showed up with the boys chomping at the bit to get the Frenchies on their bayonets, but they ain't here. They were here, you can smell it. Merchant speaking frog tongue gives it away for sure. Seems like the local samurai took offence to their perfume and whatnot. Graves is all that's left. All that I can find, anyway. Rumour has it the big boys are hiding in the mountains or something, waiting to be rescued. Point is, I can't deliver the fall of the French expedition to you. Best I can offer is to trawl around and try to sort the Frenchies out so that they can owe you, and London of course, a bit of a favour. Might help. Not what the boys want, but that's the dish of the day in the Navy. Colonel Hook has yet to show his face, but once we're all buddied up, we'll go tear that shogunate down at tote bloody allure, sir. We got a tiny bit of naval action next, nothing too significant, but since we don't see many naval battles, thought we'd have a look at this one. We've got 5 gunboats attacking 1 gunboat and an armoured gunboat, defending the little strait between Honshu and Kyushu. So we're quite outnumbered, but I thought maybe we can do something because we'll have explosive shot. So we sailed up to be really close to the enemy, and we're both firing at each other with our frontal guns, which is why we're pointing at each other. Things didn't quite go to plan, mainly because the explosive shot wasn't as explosive as predicted. It seems that for some reason, on these gunboats the explosive shot acts like normal shot, at least it has the same animations. One of my gunboats lost its front gun, so I had to sail around to use the side gun. We were so close that our sailors could shoot each other with muskets, or shoot the enemy sailors to be more specific. And there, one enemy ship suddenly caught fire, which made me think the explosive shot might have the normal effect, even if it doesn't have the usual animation. And it's just not as effective as it usually is, because we're shooting one gun at a time. Usually you're shooting like 8 explosive shots at once, and that means the fires start very quickly. Anyway, so a bit later in the fight, we're actually losing our armoured gunboat without me really paying much attention. Then I was like, oh, it is sinking, right, start repairing that. But I gave that order way too late, and the front of the ship's already gone, and those sailors probably aren't going to have much luck fighting with what remains. So our remaining gunboat's going to retreat. It did actually set fire to another enemy gunboat, so we took out 2 of them in the fight for the loss of 1 armoured gunboat. Not sure that's a very good trade. Anyway, so we'll escape. It's going to be a defeat. It's not a huge deal or anything. It just means the enemy will now be able to go through that strait and access the northern end of Honshu, the northern side of Honshu. My main fleet that's meant to be here is somewhere else at the moment. Not sure where I took it, but eventually we will resecure that, just so we don't get raided all the time. That's the main purpose. Now the Kuwana do a cheeky move. They double back after we were pursuing them previously and take this castle again with a small army. So that's annoying. Now we're going to have to double back and go for that and perhaps use someone else to finish the pursuit of the survivors from the recent fighting. And now Lawrence completes an ambush plan on the main road towards the Kuwana domain. I thought they might try to reinforce, and luckily they actually did reinforce right along the route I had hoped. So here, a chance to take out one of their armies. We couldn't deploy right next to the enemy like you sometimes can in an ambush, so the fight started with us just running forwards trying to make the enemy pay attention to us so we can start shooting. Their cav at the head of the column encountered my Scots guards, who I deployed separately, hoping that they would be able to get some flanking fire on the enemy, but for now taking out the cav is also useful, and the enemy's main force is going to turn and just charge at our line of conscripts and volunteers. So this is what I wanted to happen, but it's not necessarily ideal because our guys can't shoot very fast or accurately, meaning a big human wave attack will actually be able to reach this line without taking enormous numbers of losses. The odd unit or two might be cut down to the bare minimum, but it's not enough to rout in the case of that unit there. And other units are still looking fine. They're going to engage us with tons of strength left, and our units will not last very long in the ensuing melee. So we're facing the prospect of our centre just being wiped out, while our flanks should be alright, because in the remaining ranged fights that are going on, we'll have a decent advantage, especially with these Scots Guards coming up on the flank. We'll need to start doing some folding tactics, essentially, because those samurai and shogutai in the centre are going to be unbeatable. Here we had a case where I had tons of men firing on this unit of ninjas, but it wasn't quite enough to actually kill them or rout them before they threw a load of grenades into our line, so that's a shame. It's just not quite like when you have the lines of the upgraded British infantry who just gun everything down in front of them with no problem. We are actually going to be at risk from even very dangerous attacks running one melee unit into a group of 6 ranged units. Lawrence gets attacked once our centre is completely broken. He has to escape, and now the folding will ensue, and after this we'll be okay because the enemy have taken so many casualties to get to where they are now that their morale is going to be low. They also started kind of floundering around in front of the line and not attacking properly. The AI gets confused when you start making your line weird shapes. The last couple of units rout quite easily since the enemy's army morale is low, bringing the fight to an end. A victory, but we did lose a couple of units since where we were engaged in melee, our men were just wiped out, whereas the rest of the battle did go okay. So just somewhat messy in the execution. Good, good. Tell the captain well done. I'll order Dorian to re-secure the rest of the road, and then we shall be able to move the bodies over to the train yard. I hope I have prepared enough carriages. This is a mad place to be. A year ago, this nation was as good as ours. It appears that the more I need the situation to calm down, the more it flares up. I should have handed this operation to London back then. I would be congratulated for my service to the Empire and given as much leeway to pursue business ventures here as was given to those first into India. As it stands, I'll be cast out as an incompetent fool and see my son stripped of his legacy. At least Miss Westerman is secured. That's a thought. Find out where the young lovers are stationed at the moment and prepare to send a telegram. I must make a gamble on certain rumours. If she has any genuine interest in Charles, then maybe she'll work things out. In the east, George arrives to reinforce Joss for our behind enemy lines operations. The plan will be to move to the west to go towards Musashi province and capture the enemy's capital, but we also want to go south and capture the territory previously owned by the French in order to in some way leverage something against France or the British government for having helped or hindered them here. Anyway, so we start moving out with Joss just on his own since we don't need George. The enemy do have 2 stacks down there, but it'll be fine to leave George behind defending our base for now. Lawrence gets another ambush in the same place as the one earlier. This time it's a bit easier, just a smaller force, so we'll auto-resolve that. Seems like this plan then to hold the border is pretty successful. We can just ambush on the main road into our territory and keep the enemy out that way. Charles is going to have to move to help one of our vassals now. The Toyama family surrendered to us a while back, but the Nagaoka appear like they're going to attack them. So I'm just going to stack up next to their castle with a fleet and an army, and we'll come back to that situation later on. Now we're in the next turn. You can see the Odawara have readied themselves to defend against Jota's attack, but will it be enough? They've got two armies and we're fighting both at the same time. However, we will have the leisure of fighting them separately on the battlefield because of our artillery advantage. So if we can defeat the first one really fast, this will actually just be two relatively easy battles that happen at the same time. We had decent terrain. I moved forwards to take a hill so we can put our artillery up there to fire throughout the battle. The enemy were in full offensive mode as expected. Their cavalry from the first army just charged right at us. It's going for our right flank, which is a decent idea, better than going for the centre as the enemy cav sometimes does. Still not outflanking us enough to avoid getting shot, and now I can move all of the dragoons to block the enemy's path. They'll be able to shoot some more of them down, and then it turns out the enemy aren't even going to bother avoiding them. They'll just walk right into them and start a melee. That's not all that good for us because those Shogunate Guard Cav are a strong anti-cav unit, so against the dragoons they'll do okay. We need to retreat from that situation then. They will of course pursue, and now they're behind our lines, they're not going to be quite so easy to shoot down. In response, I decided to turn the unit on the end of our line around to shoot backwards into those Guard Cav. However, at the same time, the cavalry from the enemy's second army are attacking, so now we're making ourselves a bit more vulnerable to this situation. We could be rear attacked. Luckily, the next unit over is clearing the enemy out. The Shogunate Guard Cav take a while to kill because they have 2 hit points, as someone in the comments mentioned a long time ago, but they can still be killed, and we've got enough gunners to shoot them twice if needs be, and once they're down, the enemy's regular cavalry won't do very well at all. So now we just wait for the fight to begin. I had some naval support fire, but we've seen before with Joss, he's so good at directing the naval support fire that it hits a really narrow area, and that means the AI can dodge it quite well, because the AI is informed where you've shot. So if you shot at a small area, then it can get out of the way in time. Our regular artillery is also hammering the enemy as they come in, and that's probably doing more damage. And finally, the line battling shall begin. Here on the left, our engineers and British guards just annihilate the first unit who engages them. I think we killed an enemy gunner unit before it even started firing. That's always good stuff. They're going to charge up with some melee units, but the hill will slow them down, making that easier for us. Overall, in this fight right now, we don't have to do anything. We just have to sit back and compare the action of our troops here to what the conscripts and volunteers were doing earlier. In this case, whole enemy units are just wiped out as soon as they come into range because our units have such high accuracy and reload skill. Plus they're really high rank as well, which boosts them even higher than they already were when they were recruited. So yes, now we just wait for the enemy to be destroyed, and while some of their troops will make it into melee with our men, again our stats are so high because of our veterancy and the elite nature of our units that they simply can't beat us. We can take them down in a melee fight as well. Alright boys, battle going well I see. You know why I've brought the musicians down, don't you? Ready? When Britain's foes that hands command arose from out the azure main, arose from out the azure main. This was the charter of the land, and guardian angels sang this strain. Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britons never shall be slaves. Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britons never shall be slaves. Keep firing. With very little damage taken, the enemy are swept aside. A perfect battle overall and a nice heroic victory. So with 2 stacks out of the way, the route to the castle is clear. The death of the stack in the castle will now cause the garrison to spawn, but that's not going to be an enormous problem, just a few units, and it will be safe to auto-resolve to kill them. We grab another heroic victory, and now we have an interesting option. We can create France. Once again, this must have been their capital. So we'll make them as our vassal, like we did with the United States. The French are back and now in our service, so hopefully we'll be able to leverage this in some way. So that's our mission against the French sorted for now, at least. Next up, the Nagaoka make that attack on the Toyama that I thought might be coming in, so it's time for Charles to help out the vassal that he helped create. The Toyama are outnumbered, something like 4-1 in there, not quite sure, but it means we need to rush in really quickly and try to affect the battle before the enemy get into the castle, because they'll just win by taking the capture point while we're stuck outside. Fortunately, a large part of their army was deployed quite near to where we're coming onto the field, so they'll turn around once they see this army behind them, and that will take some of the pressure off the castle. I formed up to face them with this really deep formation, as you can see, because there's not really any space here stuck in the corner of the map where there's a river and loads of buildings as well, just blocking everything. So I'm going to do my best to engage these units here, and as long as they've turned around to face us, that's already doing the Toyama a big favour. The battle itself wasn't going very well at first, but we disrupted things by coming in with the naval support fire and blowing up a lot of the enemy's tightly packed units. While these explosions keep the enemy distracted, I was able to grab my line and reform it and move it up and start the process of outflanking the enemy. There was one issue. As I was moving up into a new position, the enemy countercharged with some of their cavalry, their general's Hatamoto I think it was, so they've now wedged themselves into our men and will do quite a lot of damage fighting in the melee, but not enough. We'll be able to kill them eventually just because of our numbers in this area. So that should go our way in the end, and then the fighting will start. A nice thing about these conscript units is that sometimes they fire like 5 or 6 ranks deep because they're somewhat loosely spaced, so you can get quite a lot of shots out in a short period of time if they're in the right formation, and there's our flanking unit getting ready to just finish things off. Meanwhile, over at the castle, the pressure is starting to be put onto the Toyama, but we can help them out using our navy. This big group of enemies that was coming towards the northern wall of the castle was easy prey for naval artillery strikes, and I happened to get a volley right into the middle of the group, so it's going to be absolutely devastated by this fire. It is actually less damaging than it looks. The balancing of naval artillery almost requires that it doesn't do very much because it's way too accurate. But anyway, so a lot of those guys who we just hit will get back up, but still we can expect a couple of 100 kills there maybe, and the enemy units are just disrupted. Hopefully their morale will be lower and their attack on the castle will be now worse off for having taken that. While that was going on, we finished off all of the units that we were engaging over here, so now our men can start rushing forwards, and some already have, to get to the castle walls and perhaps help out. Inside the castle, the melee fighting is starting. The Toyama have quite a few melee units like Yari Cav and Yari Kachi, and since they're being attacked by gun units, that's alright, but it's sheer numbers that will be the strength of the Nagaoka here. I got another opportunity though to reduce their numbers with naval fire, because here another load of units had grouped together next to a wall as well, so the ones climbing up the wall can be killed like that using the weird physics thing, and otherwise everyone just standing around will now be subject to that fire. We're almost certainly also going to hit some of our allies inside the castle, but overall I think that's going to have a net positive impact on their defensive efforts. So now I rushed up some units to finally take part in the battle. Only a few enemy units were outside the castle, so we couldn't do all that much, but the ones who still were waiting to climb were taken out easily. Here some sharpshooters are just annihilated. There were only a few units left inside, and they actually started chain routing here because the enemy's taken so many losses they can't keep the attack going. And this caused a problem because I'd already ordered an artillery barrage on the corner of the castle where previously the enemy were concentrated. But since they've all ran away and the Toyama have pursued them somewhat, we are pretty much hitting 50-50 enemies and allies with this bombardment, and those Cav containing their commander are in trouble especially. So that wasn't very nice, but after all that was done, the battle was won. the Nagaoka armies were virtually destroyed. So overall I think we did have a positive impact on that battle, since the Toyama were certainly going to lose. And hopefully Charles will feel good that we've now proven that British assistance is worth something to the Japanese. Maybe other Japanese clans will be inspired by this. That is it for this episode then. Thank you very much for watching, and a special thanks to all of the Officially Devin patrons. The French will give us an excuse to do what we were trying to do all along in the next episode of Honourable Gentlemen.